What do you think the exclusion of yourself from the March the 4th stakeholder conference says about the stakeholder group, and why do you think this was?
You're asking me about the exclusion of not just myself but also Arwa from the 2013 stakeholder conference. I'm a little reluctant to answer the question because I don't believe it's the most important thing. It's personalisation, etc., and I'm sure people will be going pots and kettles or whatever. A lot of other people were excluded from that conference, not in the sense that they received emails as Awa and I did saying, you are not coming, regardless of our waiting list, but the people I'm talking about who were excluded were the ones who didn't even know about the conference because it was so poorly advertised, it was so poorly organised, it was organised at incredibly short notice. And so I think that the real damage that the steering group did to itself, and it wasn't the whole steering group who took the decision. I spoke to members of the steering group who knew nothing about myself and Awa being excluded. This was a decision taken by one person for sure, possibly two or three. I think that is less important than the fact that the stakeholder conferences have been miserable, pathetic, demoralising, counterproductive exercises. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you aware of the roles of the people that the steering group contains? Do you think that they were representative, and are they still representative, of wider stakeholders? And can, with competing interests, can this ever work?
Am I aware of the roles of the people in the steering group, is your first question? Yes, sort of, but I'm probably the only person in Manchester who is, because I'm probably the only person who has read the minutes other than the people who were there. And I've only just found the minutes again because they're on the website with no menu attached to them.
Yeah.
So unless someone sends you the link, you can't see them. There are no biography pages giving sort of photos and who these people are. These people never, when they attend... Sorry, when I say never, I have been in many public events where members of the steering group are present, either as panellists or asking questions from the floor, and I have never once heard any of them say, as well as me being ... I am also a member of the stakeholder steering group on climate change, and here are some flyers about our organisation, and here's what we're trying to do. They are, for all intents and purposes, outside of their own little smugosphere, invisible, which really makes me wonder what on earth they think they are achieving. I know from having looked at the minutes there are a lot of people who rarely, if ever, turn up. And I think that there are a mixture of motives why people joined this group. It's had two iterations. The steering group was set up, and it's there in black and white in the certain future document about who's going to be on it. And it's fair to say that between it being set up eventually in the middle of 2010, and we covered this extensively in Manchester Climate Fortnightly, and the end of 2011, that it didn't really achieve anything. It was a smaller group of sort of 10 to 15 people, I think, and they didn't even manage to get a stakeholder conference happening in 2011. So what they then did is they just had open house, anyone who wants to apply can apply. And they didn't turn anyone down. And they didn't see, we asked what their criteria were, specific criteria, and they gave us the usual flannel back. And so it expanded very radically, but if you can't manage to get 10 or 12 people moving in the same direction, then it's quite likely that you're going to struggle with 30. And guess what? They struggled. They really struggled. Now, this was a self-selection process. People nominated themselves, and door was open to anyone who nominated themselves. I did not go for it. And the reason I didn't go for steering group in 2010 or 2009 at the end of that year, was that I knew I was going away for a year and I didn't feel it was fair to be on the steering group when I was going to be leaving. Oh, the history of Manchester would have been totally different and we'd have solved everything if only I had been on the steering group. The next thing that happens in relation to your question is that at the March 2012 meeting of the steering group, they have a discussion about the need for elections, because it actually says that membership of the steering group will be via election at the annual stakeholder conference. I was not at the March 2012 meeting of the steering group. No one's allowed to be. It's behind closed doors, etc. But I eventually got to see the minutes after much badgering and other people badgering. And the minutes show that there was an extensive discussion and an acknowledgement that elections would need to happen and that this process would start by November 2012. And an announcement was made by the previous chair of the steering group at the 2012 conference that this was happening. And we ran it as a news story. And the elections have never happened. So I would argue that an organisation has legitimacy either from its democratic credentials in that people are elected, fulfil a role, can be recalled, can be kicked off, or because it's doing lots of useful stuff. Ideally both, but one or the other means that you're kind of legitimate. I don't know anyone serious in Manchester who isn't on the steering group, who thinks that the steering group has a shred of legitimacy as it is currently working. Because they're not elected, and they've done nout.
Thank you. My next question was, do you see any other issues with the steering group? But I suppose you kind of...
Do I see any other issues with the steering group? Hi, Mom. Well, take a look at their website. They had a version 1 of the website, it was crap. Version 2 of the website was going to be all singing and dancing. And they've just admitted in July of this year, I think it was, again, from reading the minutes, I know this, that the website is crap. You can't leave comments. So what kind of interaction with the public is a website where there are no comments? The calendar's consistently out of date. The blog posts, I think they put up about 5 or 6 blog posts last year. I don't think they've put up any this year. Oh, I think they may put up 1 or 2. You go on there in search of information, you simply can't find it. Now, I run a blog which, for all its faults, weaknesses, etc., is kept up to date. And if they can't even get a freaking website right, what hope is there? And my fear is that no process of learning has been undertaken. They will not have done any reflection on why they were so hopeless at keeping a website together. So they will get some money and they will go at it again, and guess what? They'll screw it up again.
Obviously, it's not